The stars were quiet that night, but above the Earth a ship moved silently through the sky. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Sleek, silver, and glowing faintly with a soft blue light, it hovered without sound, almost like it was breathing. On board, Lyra sat alone in the observation chamber, staring at the planet below. Her eyes, bright and shimmering like twin galaxies, reflected the oceans, mountains, and cities she had watched from space for weeks. She had a mission that made her heart ache with both hope and fear. Lyra's people had faced extinction. Their world was dying. Diseases had wiped out entire generations, and no matter how advanced their technology was, it could not save them from the slow decay of their bodies. Their genes had weakened over centuries. But she had found a solution, a hope hidden light years away on a blue planet teeming with life. Humans. She had studied them for a long time. Their resilience was unmatched. Their ability to survive in harsh environments, to heal from injuries, to adapt to almost anything. It was extraordinary. And among all humans, there was one who carried something unique, his genes, the strongest she had ever encountered. She could feel it deep in her sensors and her instincts. He was the one who could help her people survive. On Earth, Dr. Ethan Hart was unaware of the galaxy's attention. He was sitting in his small, cluttered lab, surrounded by microscopes, DNA sequences, and the faint smell of coffee. He had always been fascinated by life, by what made one organism stronger than another. But he never imagined that his life's quiet work would attract attention from across the stars. The first sign of something unusual was subtle. The lights in his lab flickered. The computer screens glowed unnaturally. Then a soft hum filled the room, vibrating through the floor and walls. Ethan stood up, unsure of what was happening. He felt a chill run down his spine. The air itself seemed to shift, and then she appeared. Lyra stepped from the shadows, her silver hair floating slightly as if it had a life of its own. Her eyes, bright and endless, locked onto Ethan. "Do not be afraid," she said softly. Her voice was gentle, almost musical, yet it carried a weight that made Ethan's chest tighten. "I am Lyra. I have come to find you." Ethan blinked, unsure if he was dreaming. "Find me? Why me?" he stammered. Lyra took a small step forward. "Because you are extraordinary. Your body, your genes, they carry strength that my people need to survive. I did not choose lightly. I have watched your species for a long time, and I found you." Ethan laughed nervously, thinking it was some kind of elaborate prank. "Aliens, strength? You're joking." "I am not joking," she said. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the emotions she tried to hide. "I am here because my world is dying. My people are weak. We cannot survive the next century without help. You, humans, carry resilience that no other life form does, and you carry the strongest genes I have found. I need your help." The words hit Ethan like a shockwave. His heart raced. His mind spun. He had spent his life studying genetics, analyzing DNA sequences, and wondering about the limits of human ability. But he had never imagined it could mean something like this. Being the hope of another species. A whole civilization across the galaxy. Lyra's eyes softened. And for a moment, Ethan saw something more than duty in them. He saw hope, desperation, faith, and maybe, "Trust, you don't have to decide now," she said quietly. "But time is short. My people, they cannot wait. I had to come to you." Ethan looked at her, his mind torn between disbelief and awe. The world outside his window continued as usual. Cars honked, lights blinked, people went about their lives. And yet in that quiet lab, the weight of the universe had settled on his shoulders. He realized with a sudden clarity that he had a choice. He could ignore her and live an ordinary life, or he could step into the unknown and become something more than he ever imagined. After a long silence, he took a deep breath. "I'll help," he said, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. Lyra's lips curved into the faintest smile. Relief and gratitude shone in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "You may not understand now, but your decision, it will save millions of lives." As she extended her hand toward him, Ethan felt a strange warmth, a connection that went beyond logic or reason. It was the beginning of a journey that would take him far beyond Earth, beyond the stars, and into a destiny he had never dreamed possible. Above them, the ship glowed brighter, as if acknowledging the choice. Somewhere deep in the cosmos, hope had found a human to carry it. And in that moment, Ethan realized something profound. Being human was not just about surviving. It was about rising when the odds were impossible, about making a difference that could echo across the stars. The moment Ethan stepped onto Lyra's ship, the world he knew disappeared. The walls were smooth, metallic, and pulsing with light, alive in a way that made his skin tingle. Machines hummed softly, almost like a heartbeat, and strange symbols glowed across panels he could not understand. He had studied science all his life, but this was beyond any textbook, beyond any experiment he had ever imagined. Lyra guided him through the corridors, her hand brushing lightly against his, a reminder that he was not alone. She did not speak much at first, but her eyes communicated everything. There was urgency, there was fear, and there was hope. Hope that he would rise to the impossible task she had brought him here to accomplish. Finally, they reached a chamber that looked like a lab, though unlike anything on Earth. Tubes and machines surrounded a strange, faintly glowing liquid. Ethereal lights danced across the walls. Lyra gestured for Ethan to approach. "This is where we begin," she said softly. Her voice was steady now, but her hands trembled slightly. "This is where I need you the most." Ethan studied her, trying to grasp the enormity of what she was saying. "I don't understand," he said. "What am I supposed to do? I'm just a human. I study DNA, yes, but this, your people, your world?" Lyra knelt beside one of the tubes where a small, fragile form floated. It was an alien child, almost transparent, its veins faintly glowing. "This is my cousin Tara. She won't survive another week without help." "None of us will." Ethan's heart ached. He had read about genetic disorders, about endangered species, but this was life hanging by a thread in front of him. And somehow he was supposed to fix it. I don't know if I can," he admitted, his voice breaking. Lyra reached out, placing a delicate hand on his shoulder. "You already have what we need. You have something no machine, no formula, no alien technology can replicate. Human resilience. Your genes, your ability to survive. It is extraordinary. That is why I found you." Ethan swallowed hard. The weight of her words pressed on him, heavier than any gravity he had ever felt. It wasn't just responsibility. It was hope for an entire species. He looked at the fragile forms floating in the tubes, at the glowing eyes of children like Tara, and he realized that failure was not an option. "I'll try," he whispered. I'll do my best." Lyra smiled faintly, her eyes shimmering like starlight. "That is all I ask. That is all anyone can ask." Days passed like a dream, or maybe a nightmare. Ethan worked tirelessly, guided by Lyra and the ship's advanced systems. At first, the alien technology was overwhelming. He had never seen equipment that could map entire genomes in minutes or simulate generations of evolution in seconds. But he adapted because humans adapted. That was what he did. That was what humans were born to do. During quiet moments, Lyra would watch him work. She had expected fear, hesitation, maybe even failure, but she saw something else. Determination, focus, compassion. She realized then that humans were not just physically resilient. They carried a spirit that refused to bend, no matter the odds. One evening, as the alien sun dipped below the horizon of their planet, Ethan paused to rest. His hands were raw from hours of work, his eyes bloodshot from staring at screens and samples. He felt exhausted, but he also felt something strange, a connection not just to Lyra, but to all of her people. Lyra approached quietly. "Do you ever wonder why humans survive so well?" she asked, her voice gentle. Ethan shook his head. "I don't know. We just do, I guess. We fight, we adapt. We keep going even when things seem impossible." Lyra nodded. "Exactly. And that is why I chose you. It wasn't only your genes. It was your heart, your spirit. Humans survive because they care. They fight not just for themselves, but for others. That is something no technology can replicate. That is why you are the one." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. He had always thought of science as logic, numbers, and experiments. But Lyra made him see it differently. She made him see that life itself was not just survival. It was love, courage, and the will to endure against impossible odds. Over time, they shared more than work. Ethan learned about Lyra's childhood, about the world she loved and feared. She told him of cities crumbling under disease, of skies once bright now gray, and of the small joys that had survived despite everything. He shared stories of Earth, of humanity's struggles and triumphs, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And slowly, a bond grew between them, not just of necessity, but of understanding and trust. In the silence of the ship, amid machines and glowing tubes, they found a shared hope that life, no matter how fragile, was worth fighting for. The galaxy beyond their window was vast and cold, full of dangers and mysteries. But inside the ship, with its strange lights and humming walls, Ethan realized something profound. He was not just a human. He was a symbol. A bridge between worlds, and for the first time, he felt the weight and wonder of what it truly meant to be human. And Lyra, watching him quietly, knew that the impossible task of saving her people might just be possible. Because humanity had arrived, the ship left Earth silently, slipping through the blackness of space. Ethan watched the blue planet shrink into a tiny dot behind them, and a strange ache settled in his chest. Everything familiar was gone. The streets he walked every day, the smell of rain on concrete, the laughter of people in cafes. It was all thousands of miles away, replaced by cold stars and an endless void. Yet beside him, Lyra moved with calm purpose, guiding him through the ship's corridors as if she had walked them 1,000 times. For days they traveled between the stars. Ethan marveled at the galaxy, at planets glowing with strange light, at moons that danced around distant suns. Every sight was breathtaking yet terrifying. He had never imagined the universe could feel both enormous and intimate at the same time. And through it all, Lyra was there, a quiet presence beside him, her eyes reflecting starlight, her calm steadying his growing fear. "You look worried," Lyra said one night, her voice soft through the hum of the engines. "I am," Ethan admitted. "It's overwhelming. I don't know if I'm ready for this. I don't even know what's waiting for us." Lyra's gaze softened. "I won't lie. My world is fragile. My people are weak, and this journey is only the first step. But you are not ordinary. You carry the strength to change everything. That is why I chose you." Ethan thought about her words. Strength. He had never considered himself strong. He had studied humans, their resilience, their ability to survive, but he had always been a quiet observer, a man of science, not action. And yet here he was, hurtling across space, the fate of another civilization in his hands. "The truth," Lyra continued, "is not just about DNA. It is about what a species can endure. Humans endure. You fight even when there seems to be no reason. You keep going, and that is what makes you extraordinary." Ethan swallowed hard. I hope I can live up to that." "You will," she said simply. And for the first time, Ethan felt a flicker of hope amid the fear. The days blended into nights as they traveled. Though time felt different on the ship, Ethan learned to operate the alien systems, guided by Lyra's patient instructions. Every day he saw more of the fragile lives they were fighting to save. He saw children like Tara, their forms recorded in stasis pods, waiting for the moment when his human genes could give them strength. One afternoon, a sudden alarm rang through the ship. Red lights bathed the corridors, and the hum of engines shifted into a tense vibration. Lyra's eyes widened, and she grabbed Ethan's hand. "An asteroid field," she said, her voice tight. "We must navigate carefully." Ethan's heart pounded. He had never flown a ship, let alone through a field of jagged rocks moving at impossible speeds. Yet he followed her instructions, guided by her calm, trusting that humans could adapt to anything. He learned to anticipate, to calculate, to act, and slowly the ship twisted and turned through the chaos. One wrong move could have ended everything, but together, they navigated the deadly corridor. When the danger passed, Ethan exhaled shakily. Lyra smiled, her hand brushing his shoulder. "You are stronger than you realize," she said softly. "Humans endure. You are proof." That night, after the adrenaline faded, Ethan sat by the observation window. Stars stretched endlessly in all directions, and he realized the universe was larger than he had ever imagined. And yet, in all that vastness, one human could make a difference. One human could carry hope to an entire species. Lyra joined him, her hand resting lightly on his. "You carry more than DNA," she said quietly. "You carry courage. You carry determination, and that is what can save lives. Not just genes, but heart. That is why you were chosen." Ethan looked at her, understanding for the first time the weight of her words. He was not just a scientist, not just a man from Earth. He was a symbol of humanity, of resilience, of strength, of hope. And that realization filled him with both pride and fear. Days turned into weeks. Lyra taught him about her people's history, about the mistakes that had weakened their civilization, about the small acts of bravery that had kept them alive this long. Ethan shared stories of Earth, how humanity had survived floods, plagues, and wars, how ordinary people had done extraordinary things simply because they refused to give up. Through their conversations, Ethan felt a bond forming, fragile but real. It was more than friendship. It was trust, respect, and something that neither of them fully understood yet. Hope. Finally, the ship approached the alien planet. From orbit, Ethan could see the cities gray and crumbling, the clouds thick with dust and disease. Lyra's people floated in stasis pods across the city centers, waiting for the gift that humans could provide. The sight was heartbreaking. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him like a physical force. "This is where it begins," Lyra said softly, her hand finding his. "Here, humans will show the galaxy what we are capable of. Together, we can save my people." Ethan nodded, gripping her hand tightly. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, dangerous, and full of doubt. But he also knew something else. Humans had a way of rising against impossible odds. And if there was one thing the universe had learned from Earth, it was this: humanity never gave up. And in that moment, as the alien planet grew larger below them, Ethan understood the truth. The journey to save a species would test him in ways he could not imagine. But he also knew that together with Lyra, they could turn hope into reality. The alien planet was nothing like Earth. The air was heavy, tinged with metallic dust that made Ethan cough as he stepped onto the surface. Cities lay in ruin, gray and crumbling as if time itself had stopped. The sky was a dull orange, thick with clouds that never seemed to break. Ethan felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. This was a world on the brink, a civilization clinging desperately to life. Lyra led him through the streets, her movements light and practiced, but Ethan could see the sadness in her posture. Everywhere he looked, there were reminders of what had been lost: empty homes, shattered towers, silent streets. And yet there were pockets of life. Weak, fragile beings moving slowly, their eyes dull, their bodies frail. These were the people he had come to save. "This is my home," Lyra whispered, her voice catching. "And it is dying, my people. They need you." Ethan felt the weight of her words settle on him. It was one thing to study genetics in a lab. It was another to face a living, breathing population on the edge of extinction. He swallowed hard. I will do my best," he said, though the enormity of the task made him feel small and powerless. They arrived at the central lab, a towering structure that looked like it had been repaired countless times. Inside, tubes and pods held the most fragile forms of life he had ever seen. Children, elders, and young adults floated in suspended animation, their bodies thin, transparent, almost ghost-like. Ethan felt a pang in his chest. Every life was precious, and yet every second mattered. "This is where I need you the most," Lyra said, her hand brushing his arm. "We cannot wait. If we do nothing, they will all die." Ethan set to work. The alien technology was unlike anything on Earth. Machines hummed, lights blinked, and holographic projections mapped the genetic codes of thousands of beings at once. At first he felt overwhelmed, but humans adapted. He studied, learned, and slowly the machines began to make sense. His hands moved with purpose, guided by knowledge, instinct, and determination. Days and nights blurred together. Ethan rarely slept. Lyra stayed close, offering guidance, encouragement, and sometimes quiet companionship. There were moments when the work felt hopeless, forms that refused to respond, genes too fragile to repair, failures that made his stomach twist with guilt. But every time he felt despair, he looked at Lyra. Her faith in him never wavered. "Humans survive against impossible odds," she said one night, her hand on his shoulder. "That is why I chose you. Not because of your strength, but because of your spirit. You endure even when hope is fragile. You fight even when failure seems certain." Ethan swallowed hard, the words resonating deep inside him. She was right. Humans had faced plagues, disasters, wars, and yet they endured. And now he realized that endurance was not just physical, it was emotional. It was courage. It was love. It was the will to keep going for the sake of others. As he worked, small victories began to appear. Weak children gained color in their skin. Eyes that had dulled with sickness began to sparkle. Lyra's people slowly stirred, their bodies gaining strength, their movements more purposeful. And every success filled Ethan with awe. He realized that science alone was not enough. Human determination, patience, and care were just as crucial. One afternoon, a crisis struck. A young alien child's pod malfunctioned, the life support failing faster than the machines could repair. Panic surged through the lab. Lyra's eyes widened in fear. Ethan acted instinctively. He bypassed protocols, using a combination of human ingenuity and careful observation to stabilize the child. The pod hissed and glowed, and finally the child's body relaxed, safe once more. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "You saved her," she whispered. You. All of us." Ethan felt an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. It was pride, yes, but also a deep connection, an understanding that his humanity and all its imperfections had made a difference. He realized then that being human was not just about surviving. It was about fighting for others even when the odds were impossible, even when failure seemed certain. Weeks passed. Slowly, the alien population began to recover. Children laughed quietly. Elders regained strength, and hope returned to eyes that had long forgotten it. Lyra watched Ethan tirelessly, her admiration evident. "You are more than your genes," she said. "You are a reminder that life is worth saving. You are proof that humans are extraordinary." Ethan looked around the lab at the growing signs of life. The work was far from over, but for the first time he allowed himself to believe that it could succeed. And he understood something profound. Humanity's strength was not just in muscles or DNA. It was in heart, in spirit, in the refusal to give up. Lyra's hand brushed his once more, a simple gesture yet filled with meaning. "You are the hope my people needed," she said. "Not just your science, not just your knowledge. Your humanity saved us." Ethan smiled, exhausted but determined. He realized that this journey had changed him forever. He had come to save another species, but in doing so, he had discovered the true meaning of being human. Courage, compassion, and the unyielding drive to fight for life, no matter how impossible the odds. And as he looked at Lyra, standing beside the thriving pods of her people, he understood that the greatest strength of humanity was not just in survival, it was in love, hope, and the will to make a difference. Days on the alien planet had begun to change rhythm. What had once been a world of gray, lifeless streets was now slowly returning to color. Ethan moved among the pods, checking on fragile lives that had once teetered on the edge of extinction. Children's skin glowed with warmth, elders moved with steadier steps, and faint laughter echoed in the halls, a sound Lyra had longed to hear for years. Yet the work was far from complete. Many of Lyra's people still struggled. Their bodies were weak, their immune systems fragile. Every day brought new challenges, and Ethan felt the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. Each life was precious, each failure unforgivable, and still he persevered. Humans endured, and that endurance became the engine that powered hope on the alien world. "You're doing more than I imagined," Lyra said quietly, standing beside him one afternoon. Her eyes shimmered with gratitude and wonder. "My people, they are waking because of you. Because of humanity." Ethan shook his head, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "I didn't do this alone. You guided me, your people. They fight too, even when their bodies are weak. And you believed in me. That made the difference." Lyra smiled faintly, though a shadow of worry lingered in her eyes. "The final stage is the most dangerous," she said. "We have to strengthen the population fully. The process will test both of us. If it fails," her voice caught. "If it fails, we lose everything." Ethan's chest tightened. He had felt fear before, but this was different. This was the weight of an entire civilization, a burden unlike any he had carried on Earth. But alongside that fear was determination. Humans survived impossible odds. Humans adapted, fought, and endured. And that was exactly what he had to do. Together, they began the final stage. Ethan's hands moved confidently over the alien technology, integrating his DNA patterns with the weak genetic codes of Lyra's people. Machines hummed, lights pulsed, and the air was thick with tension. Some pods glowed brighter, some flickered uncertainly. For every success, there was a challenge. A young alien who refused to respond. an elder whose body was too frail to recover quickly. Hours passed, each one heavier than the last. Ethan's mind raced, calculating, adapting, improvising. Lyra remained by his side, guiding him, comforting him, sometimes simply holding his hand when the pressure seemed unbearable. "You are extraordinary," she whispered once. "Not just your genes, your heart. You remind us that life is worth fighting for." The breakthrough came quietly. A small group of children, the weakest of the population, stirred in their pods. Their eyes, once dull and lifeless, opened wide. They reached out, touching the glass, their voices weak but filled with curiosity. And then another, and another, until the lab was alive with the sound of breathing, laughter, and whispered names. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She hugged Ethan tightly, the first embrace of relief and joy in years. "You saved them," she said, her voice breaking. Humanity, you saved us all." Ethan felt a strange warmth he had never known. Pride, yes, but also humility. He had come from a small world, an ordinary life, and now he had done something extraordinary. He had not just survived, he had given life to thousands, and he realized something profound. The human spirit was more powerful than any technology, more enduring than any gene, and more impactful than any force in the universe. As the alien children played and laughed, Ethan noticed elders standing taller, their eyes shining with clarity and hope. Families reunited, voices once silent filled the halls, and a sense of normalcy returned to the planet. The transformation was not just physical, it was emotional, spiritual. Hope had returned, and with it, the promise of survival. Lyra led Ethan to the observation deck. The sun, a faint orange disk in the alien sky, cast warm light over the recovering city. "You see?" she said softly. "This is what humans do. You fight, you endure, you inspire. You didn't just repair their bodies. You reminded them that life is worth living." Ethan looked at the thriving population, at Lyra standing beside him, and felt a swell of emotion. He understood now why she had chosen him, not because he was the strongest physically, but because he carried the qualities that defined humanity: courage, compassion, resilience, and an unbreakable will to protect life. "Will they survive?" he asked quietly, almost afraid of the answer. "They will," Lyra said, smiling through tears. "Because of you. Because of what humans bring to the universe. They will survive and thrive. And someday they may even surpass what we ever imagined." Ethan nodded, feeling a weight lift from his heart. He had faced the impossible, and through human determination he had triumphed. He realized that humanity's gift to the galaxy was not just strength or knowledge. It was the heart, the spirit, and the will to fight for something greater than oneself. Lyra touched his hand gently. "You came to save us," she said, her voice tender. "And in doing so, you showed us why humans are extraordinary. You showed us why hope never dies." Ethan looked at her, and for a moment the vastness of space, the struggles of the alien world, and the enormity of his journey all seemed to fade. There was only this moment, the triumph of life, the strength of humanity, and the bond he shared with the girl who had trusted him against impossible odds. And somewhere deep inside, he knew the truth. Humans were not just survivors. They were beacons capable of shining hope into the darkest corners of the universe. And on this alien world, that light had just returned. The alien planet glowed softly under the light of its twin suns. Streets once gray were now alive with motion. Children ran and laughed freely, their voices carrying across the city. Elders walked with steadier steps, talking and smiling as families reunited. Hope had returned, life had returned. And at the heart of it all, Ethan Hart stood quietly, watching the transformation he had helped create. Lyra approached him slowly, her silver hair catching the sunlight. Her eyes were bright, yet filled with a sadness he could feel in his chest. "The work is done," she said softly. "Your people? Your humanity has saved mine, but now you must return to your world." Ethan nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had grown attached to this planet, to its people, and most of all to Lyra. Their bond had grown from necessity into something deeper, something he could not fully name. And yet he knew she was right. Earth called him home. He belonged there, even if his heart had expanded to reach beyond the stars. "I wish I could stay," he said quietly, his voice thick. "I wish I could help you more." Lyra reached out, taking his hand in hers. Her touch was gentle, reassuring, and somehow heavier than the pull of gravity. "You have done more than you realize," she said. "You gave us life, yes, but more than that, you gave us hope. You reminded my people that even in the darkest moments, life is worth fighting for. That is something no machine, no technology can do." Ethan looked around at the thriving city below. Families were playing, children were learning, adults were rebuilding their homes and communities. All of it bore the mark of humanity. Not just his science, but his courage, determination, and compassion. Lyra was right. Hope had a face, and for her people it was his. "Will you remember me?" Ethan asked, his heart aching. "I will remember you," Lyra said, her voice trembling slightly. "Always, you are the human who carried hope across the stars. You are the one who reminded us what it means to live. Your people. They are extraordinary." Ethan swallowed hard. It was rare for someone to speak of humanity in such reverent terms, and rarer still to feel that humanity reflected back at him so clearly. For the first time, he understood something profound. Humans were not just survivors. They were creators, inspirers, bearers of light even in the darkest corners of the universe. The ship waited silently, its engines humming softly as if sensing the weight of the farewell.